everyone. I'm happy to present today about unintentional weight loss among nursing home residents. I've done a lot of my own research in this area, so I hope the information that we provide today is helpful. Let me make sure I can actually, so we already shared financial disclosures before, so I will skip over that. So my objectives today are to define unintentional weight loss among nursing home residents, to describe the impact of COVID-19 on risk factors for weight loss, provide an overview of relevant research evidence on preventing unintentional weight loss, and most importantly, provide some guidance and suggestions for meaningful quality improvement PDSA cycles that you can implement to help address low oral food and fluid intake and unintentional weight loss among your residents, particularly in this new era of COVID. So as many of you probably are already well aware, clinically significant weight loss is defined by CMS and the minimum data set criteria as 5% or more in 1 month, or 7.5% in 3 months, or 10% in 6 months. And these are the metrics that are used for the unintentional weight loss quality indicator that is reported to CMS for all nursing homes nationally. In nursing home residents, there are a multitude of factors that can contribute to poor oral intake and weight loss, which is why it's so challenging to address it among many nursing home residents. There's physical impairment issues, sensory, cognitive, as well as environmental and psychosocial factors that all contribute to weight loss. And I will briefly describe each of these in turn. So in terms of physical risk factors for unintentional weight loss, just general aging causes decreased thirst and hunger sensations. There's poor dentition that can contribute to chewing difficulties, along with problems with digestion, slow digestion, and constipation, all of which can contribute to a reduction in appetite. And of course, there's physical impairments that can prevent someone from being physically capable of eating independently. And these physical impairments have been exacerbated among those with COVID, which can cause additional deconditioning, as well as just generalized weakness, again, difficulty chewing and swallowing, and just physically being unable to hold or use utensils to feed oneself. The research that we have on COVID has certainly shown that it can worsen physical deconditioning and just general fatigue. There was one study that showed that among nursing home residents who had gotten COVID and recovered, that 50% of them had not regained the weight that they had lost even after 6 months of recovery. So it definitely can have a marked impact on unintentional weight loss episodes among those who have gone through a COVID episode. And this really underscores the importance of early detection and action via a new or revised care plan that may mitigate the weight loss that happens from COVID, or at least help with recovery rates. There's also sensory impairments. Of course, many older adults have some vision loss that can interfere with their ability to even see what's food, the food items in front of them. Hearing loss that can impair their ability to understand staff when staff are trying to give them verbal cues for eating. Many older adults have medications that can either decrease their appetite or alter the taste of foods or the smell of foods. And of course, dietary restrictions are common among nursing home residents, and those can make food less appealing in terms of taste, texture, and appearance. And as we well know now, COVID can also affect taste and smell, and in some cases permanently. Cognitive impairment risk factors are probably one of the most common, though, in the nursing home setting. Many residents in a long-term care environment have some degree of cognitive impairment, and that can interfere with their perception of food. They may not recognize the food items that are being given to them. They may not be able to differentiate between what is edible versus inedible. Again, COVID can accelerate cognitive decline. Many older adults with cognitive impairment can forget whether or not they've eaten. They can forget how to use silverware to feed themselves, and they may not be able to express taste or smells changes, or whether or not they have an appetite. And certainly COVID can exacerbate someone's need for assistance with eating as well. Now, so far, we've talked mostly about risk factors that you can't do a whole lot about in terms of changes with aging and physical and cognitive impairments. But there's also environmental influences. Eating in a noisy environment with a lot of distractions tends to interfere with residents' food and fluid intake. Improper positioning for eating, most commonly allowing residents to eat meals in their bed rather than getting them up out of bed, at least into a chair, so they can be upright to the greatest extent possible. A lack of socialization during mealtime can also interfere with someone's eating, and a lack of familiar food options, as well as a disruption of routines around mealtime, and to what extent those routines align with a resident's preferences for when they like to have their meals, and then limited options in terms of alternatives to the served meal, as well as an assortment of snack foods and fluids between meals to choose from. Again, COVID era changes have impacted a lot of facility-wide changes in dining routines and staffing, and in some cases, even in dietary budgets within facilities. We've gone through periods where group dining hasn't been allowed in facilities, and that, of course, in turn has an immediate impact on mealtime socialization. Of course, there's been family visitation restrictions, and families often visit during meals or will bring food from outside the facility, which really benefits the resident. So all of those kinds of COVID era restrictions in terms of facility-wide policies has negatively impacted the mealtime experience for residents. This is really important to understand. So we actually did a study on the influence of dining location and how that impacts residents' food and fluid intake and the amount and quality of assistance they receive. And those and other studies have shown this as well, that dining location definitely has a significant impact on mealtime consumption. Residents who have meals in a dining room or any other kind of congregate meal setting, so they're eating with other people, are significantly more likely to receive staff attention and assistance during the meal to promote consumption. They're more likely to receive social interaction, both with staff as well as other residents, which directly increases their intake. Generally, residents consume a greater proportion of the served meal when they're eating in the dining room. They're also more likely to receive offers of alternatives to the served meal when they're eating poorly, and they have more accurate medical record documentation of their meal intake when they're eating in the dining room. So for all of these reasons, we recommend that all residents should be strongly encouraged to eat at least 2 of 3 meals a day in the dining room, but especially those who are at risk for unintentional weight loss. And again, COVID restricted our ability for any residents to eat in the dining room, but we're slowly returning to allowing that practice to happen again. Psychosocial risk factors related to weight loss, again, exacerbated by COVID, is just general isolation, again, from, group activities and group dining and family visitation. All those restrictions really impacted residents' sense of loneliness and feelings of depression and frustration, discomfort, and even fear. And of course, all of these emotions negatively impact a resident's food and fluid intake and can increase their risk for weight loss. This graph shows the national minimum data set prevalence rates for unintentional weight loss earlier in 2019, prior to COVID and family visitation restrictions. And then at the beginning of 2020, you can see when family visitation was restricted entirely, that average rate went from between 5 and 6% up to between 7 and 8%, and it stayed there until toward the end of 2021, until family visitation restrictions were lifted again and families were allowed to start coming back to facilities. So this really demonstrates how important it is to allow families to be able to visit their loved ones. COVID has also impacted the number of experienced staff we have available to help residents with eating assistance, as well as other aspects of their care. Generally, there's been a significant increase in the use of agency or temporary staff who may not be as familiar with the residents' eating assistance needs. And then, of course, overall, staffing shortages have impacted the staff time available to help with eating, just fewer staff in general, and as well as other competing demands on their time. And then the CMS waivers for CNA training and QAPI requirements have also impacted this. So it might seem like, given all of these factors that are contributing to residents eating poorly and experiencing unintentional weight loss, that there isn't a whole lot that you can do about it from a quality improvement standpoint. But that's actually not the case. So next, I want to focus on sharing some potential solutions that you might be able to try in your own facilities to address this issue. So I'll briefly describe 4 different strategies that can be used together or one at a time, however you choose to implement them. One is really championing a quality mealtime assistance program. So really targeting your feeding assistance care plans and coaching of dedicated staff that are responsible for mealtime assistance. Second is focusing on the consistency and accuracy of your facility weighing procedures. Third is championing a between meal snacking program. And fourth is cross-training existing non-nursing staff and or volunteers to assist with meals and or snack delivery. And I will go through each of these in turn. This slide might be the most important one in my entire presentation today. And that is knowing that there are multiple risk factors that can contribute to unintentional weight loss among nursing home residents, and that some of these factors really can't be changed, aging, sensory, cognitive, and physical impairments. It's really important in terms of a quality improvement effort in this on this topic is to focus on care processes that are under the direct control of your staff, much more so than the clinical outcome. The clinical outcome in this case is individual weight loss episodes or your facility-wide prevalence rate of weight loss among your residents. So what's important to know is that even under optimal care conditions, when you're doing the best job possible of providing excellent quality nutritional care, you will still have some residents who will continue to lose weight. And that's okay. That's just the nature of this long-term care resident population. But there are key daily care processes that are very important and under the control of staff. And those are mealtime assistance quality, between meal snack delivery, and the accuracy of your weighing procedures to allow early detection of weight changes. So those 3 areas really should be your primary focus in a quality improvement effort. So let's talk a little bit about mealtime assistance quality. Multiple studies have shown that approximately half of poor eaters will significantly increase their meal intake with improvements in mealtime assistance. However, we've also shown that residents who need mealtime assistance require at least 15 to 20 minutes of assistance per meal. And the average is really closer to 30 minutes per meal. And that is in contrast to what they typically receive under usual care conditions, which often averages less than 10 minutes per meal. So clearly there's a significant gap between the amount of assistance that most residents receive and the amount that they actually need to promote adequate food and fluid consumption. And again, in the context of COVID, the training waivers for staff have resulted in an increased number of inadequately trained staff who might be given this task without knowing exactly the best way to go about it. So one PDSA cycle or Plan, Do, Study, Act cycle would be to focus on this mealtime assistance issue and related resident care plans and the coaching of staff who will be dedicated to provide that assistance. I'm not going to go through each of these in detail. You'll have access to the slide deck. This is just an example. But you can imagine focusing on a certain percentage of or a certain number of your high-risk residents. You can define that in different ways, but identifying residents who have either experienced a recent weight loss episode or who you know to be at high risk for unintentional weight loss, and then assigning them a trained staff member with the goal that that resident will receive a minimum of 15 minutes of assistance during at least 2 meals per day. So we're not even starting with trying to make it happen across all 3 meals. Part of this process will be assessing those high-risk residents by directly observing them during mealtime to determine what their mealtime care needs are, and then creating a mealtime care plan that meets those needs. And then secondly, to intentionally improve the staff training related to mealtime assistance and using a dedicated champion, someone on the team who's really going to pay attention to those care plans and coach the staff and make sure that they know how to provide good quality mealtime assistance to those targeted residents. There's lots of different staff who could potentially be involved in this kind of effort. Of course, nurse aides. We have found that speech therapy and occupational therapy staff, as well as dietary, your facility dietitian can also be really helpful. And of course, nurse leadership. It's very important to complete an initial assessment of the resident's eating assistance needs to inform that care plan, and then offer the coaching to the staff who are explicitly assigned to assist those targeted residents, and then repeat those observations to ensure that that care plan is being implemented, again, at least during 2 of the 3 meals a day. And of course, we recommend that you try to get those people to the dining room as well. So I will go over the tool that you can use next, but your measure will actually be based on observation. What is the mealtime assistance quality? And then what's the resident's meal intake? Those are the 2 most important things to focus on, but certainly monitoring the impact of that plan on the resident's weight over multiple months. So this is a simplified observational tool that we developed as part of prior studies, and that we've actually taught nursing home staff to use in a number of different facilities. You can identify, we have general guidance at the top of the form about how to identify people for observation. So you can use your own criteria. It can be someone who's newly admitted or who's had a change in condition. It can be someone who's due for an MDS assessment, or it can be someone who's had a recent weight loss episode and you're concerned about whether or not they're getting the attention that they need during meals. So you have a trained person who watches them, ideally during at least 2 meals within the same week. We ideally like to watch, at least 1 breakfast, 1 lunch, and 1 dinner for each person, because there can be some meal variability. We have found that it's sufficient to indicate whether or not someone is eating more or less than half of all the served foods and fluids they are given, because those residents who are consistently eating less than 50% of all the items put in front of them are at significantly higher risk for weight loss. Staff should be offering alternatives or substitutions if someone is eating poorly. So that's an important thing to note, whether or not that those kinds of alternatives are being made available. And then there's a column to document all the various types of staff assistance provided during the meal, and the bottom part of the form gives you very brief definitions of those different types of assistance. And then the last column allows you to indicate the total amount of assistance time. Now, it might seem a little misleading that we have this as more or less than 5 minutes in this column. But if you look at our explanation at the bottom of the form, what we have found is that when we're doing observations, if we see a staff member sitting with a resident and they're spending more than 5 minutes with that resident, on average, they end up spending 15 to 20 minutes total throughout the meal. If you observe them throughout the entire meal period, residents who are receiving more than 5 minutes of continuous staff attention, on average, are typically receiving the 15 to 20 minutes. Whereas those who are receiving less than 5 minutes are receiving either no staff attention at all, or they're just getting very simple meal delivery and meal setup, and that's it. So the 5-minute criterion is just a good marker for who among your residents are getting more, no staff attention at all during meals versus at least some staff attention. So it allows you to focus on that latter group. Some other general strategies for improving mealtime assistance quality. Again, group dining. You can seat residents in need of staff attention together at the same table. We recommend groups of 3 to 4 residents to 1 trained staff member. It makes it very efficient for the staff member. Again, the goal of 2 meals per day. If you're unable to provide good quality mealtime assistance during all 3 scheduled meals because of staffing shortages, then we recommend targeting the breakfast and lunch meals, because those are typically the meals when residents naturally have higher intake relative to dinner. Utilize your entire team, licensed nurses, dietary managers, speech and OT. These are all incredibly valuable team members who can not only already provide mealtime assistance, but they can also provide excellent coaching and supervision in terms of helping with these observations and helping you develop an appropriate care plan for high-risk residents. Non-nursing staff can also provide valuable assistance. They can help with transporting residents to and from the dining room to allow the group dining to happen. They can help with retrieval of alternatives from the kitchen so that the staff member responsible for assistance doesn't have to stop what they're doing and leave the table and go to the kitchen to get something else. They can just intermittently provide socialization and encouragement to all residents during meals. Again, none of those kinds of activities require special training, and those are ways that non-nursing staff can really help support a good quality mealtime program. We also recommend coordinating with your kitchen and dietary manager to try to make the served items for these high-risk residents as calorie dense as possible, along with making sure there's easy access to alternatives or second servings of preferred items. So if there's one item on the tray that the resident seems to really enjoy, something they ate 100% of, then by all means offer them a second helping of that item and don't worry about the item that they're eating 0. So let's move on to improving the accuracy of weighing procedures, because that's obviously incredibly important. This can be a little bit more challenging than what some might assume at first glance. We recommend auditing your weight assessment protocol with the goal of showing improvements in the completeness and accuracy and consistency of your weighing procedures over multiple months. Now, you can do an initial audit of a larger group of residents. I'm just suggesting here 10 to 20 residents. And then after that, so it doesn't have to be of everyone. You don't have to feel like this is something you have to do for your entire resident population. You could also think about auditing smaller numbers by unit if your weighing procedures or your staff responsible for those weighing procedures are different from unit to unit. But after your initial audit of a larger group, then you can do smaller audits monthly to continue to monitor the accuracy of your procedures. Ideally, you'd like to designate wait staff to be trained on your protocol guidelines, and we'll go through that in a moment. So if you identify the staff who are responsible for your weighing procedures, you train them on your guidelines, and then you observe them with this auditing approach monthly during just a subset of their weighing procedures. So you don't have to observe them for every single weight that they do. Again, you can, in terms of the do part and who you designate, most often it's typically nurse aides or restorative nurse aides, but it can certainly be other select team members. So the focus here is on, in terms of the measures, on the consistency of the weighing protocol month to month based on the audits and the completeness and accuracy of the weight values. And then this also gives the team an opportunity to meet monthly to discuss that weighing process and the variability between staff members responsible for the weighing procedures. So our general weighing procedure guidelines are here. And these are just the key components of a standardized weighing procedure to ensure accuracy. You want to keep the type of scale that you use for an individual resident consistent from month to month. So if someone's weighed each month in a chair scale, then ideally you'd like to use that chair scale each time. Importantly, you want to always ensure that scale is calibrated to 0 prior to weighing. This is actually a common source of error. We got in the routine of keeping a small handheld weight next to the scale so that you could check to make sure that it was calibrated to 0 prior to weighing. That's an easy way to do that. Ideally, you'd also like to keep the time of day generally consistent. We recommend weighing residents at approximately the same time of day each month. So if you want to consistently do it before breakfast or after breakfast, it doesn't have to be the exact time, but within a few hours, or morning versus afternoon versus evening. Clothing is a big one. Weighing residents in clean, dry bedclothes without a lot of extra items on their person, and making sure you provide incontinence care prior to weighing. All those kinds of things can really contribute to error in weight values. And then designating certain staff members to keep that kind of consistency in the process, making them aware of the standardized procedures, making sure they know how to operate the facility scales, and then having dedicated supervisory staff who can regularly audit them to make sure they're utilizing those procedures. So this is an auditing form that we developed to ensure accuracy of weighing procedures, and it really captures all of those elements. Again, you don't have to do it on everyone. You can just sample 5 or so residents who are due for a monthly weight, and a dedicated supervisory person would just observe the person responsible for weighing and make sure that they are consistently following these procedures. So I'll next move on to snacking. This sounds like a really minor sort of optional thing to do. And of course, most of us try to avoid snacking ourselves. But in the nursing home setting, this is actually an extremely effective and practical strategy to implement for those who are at risk for unintentional weight loss, and particularly among those who are eating poorly during meals, even with good quality mealtime assistance. So if you've developed a care plan, a mealtime assistance plan on someone, and they're still eating poorly during meals, despite getting extra attention from staff, then definitely try a snack program for them. We have found that snack offers between meals are just as important as mealtime assistance and effective for over 80% of residents who are eating poorly. Between meal snacks typically do not result in lower meal intake for at-risk residents. That's often a question that we get. Oh, if we offer snacks between meals, won't residents eat even less of their meal? Well, for those residents who are already eating poorly, no, it doesn't have an impact on their meal intake. It essentially just results in doubling the number of opportunities per day that they have to consume calories. Most residents in need of snacks, however, also need at least 5 to 10 minutes of staff assistance to encourage snack consumption. So it isn't a simple matter of just dropping some snack items off on their bedside table or handing them the items and moving on to the next person. They do still need that assistance and encouragement to promote consumption. However, it's only 5 to 10 minutes per person. So it tends to be very efficient and much less time than what a mealtime assistance episode would require. Additional strategies for a robust snacking program. We recommend that you schedule at least 2, ideally 3, between meal snack offers per day. These snack offers can be combined with medication pass, with organized group activities, assuming that those are allowed again, or other active volunteer or hydration programs that you might already have in your facility. Certainly, you do need to coordinate with your kitchen, again, to allow for calorie-dense snack options, and of course, the timely delivery of those items to the unit to allow those dedicated staff to pass those snacks. And we also recommend that you really try to focus on a real food first philosophy. And that's because residents will typically consume more calories when they're offered a variety of real snack foods and fluids compared to offers of only oral liquid nutritional supplements such as Ensure, Resource, or Boost. So again, I won't go through this in detail in the interest of time, but this is just saying that you'll focus on high-risk residents, and the goal will be to ensure that they receive at least 2 snack offers per day. And we have a similar observational tool that you can use to monitor snack delivery and resident consumption of snacks just a few days a week for the first month, and then you can just do once per week in subsequent months. Again, the measure is the focus on the consistency of snack delivery and the staff assistance and resident consumption. So note here that the focus is on the care process, the activities that are under the control of staff, and less so on the outcome of how that impacts unintentional weight loss, even though it should have an impact on that. So this is our snack form. Again, the nice thing about both meals and snacks is that they typically happen within a predictable time frame. You know when scheduled meal delivery typically happens in your facility. You know when the trays are out on the floor, and you know when snack items come to the unit to be passed. So you have a general idea of when staff should be providing this care to the high-risk residents. So this just gives you an easy way to monitor that, to make sure that the residents are in fact being given those items, and importantly, that they're being given the assistance and encouragement to promote consumption. And this allows you to track if they're given actual food and fluid items versus a supplement and what their consumption is. And there's the detailed guidance at the bottom of the form that hopefully gives you even more instruction about how to use this form. So lastly, I will speak to cross-training non-nursing staff, which we have been seeing a significant increase in this during the pandemic. So training non-nursing staff, or what some people refer to as an adopt a resident for meals kind of program. Again, you can focus on high-risk residents and with the goal of training non-nursing staff to help with mealtime assistance, and then assigning those trained staff to specific residents who you know need additional assistance during meals. So selecting appropriate residents for mealtime assistance is your first change, and then your second is identifying non-nursing staff within your facility, as well as volunteers who are interested or willing to go through the training curriculum. The federal training requirement is an 8-hour curriculum, but it is free, and we've created an 8-hour training module. It's broken up into individual modules and made it available online. This meets both the federal and the state regulatory requirements for training non-nursing personnel or volunteers to help with nutritional care delivery. Your dietary manager or speech therapist can help with selecting appropriate residents. Per the federal and state regulation, anyone can be trained to help with eating. They just recommend that you exclude residents with a history or risk of aspiration. So they don't want you to assign non-nursing personnel to help with those residents, but otherwise trained staff can help with any other resident. The non-nursing staff can complete training, and then they can be paired with selected residents during a certain number of meals per week. And then we recommend that you observe their eating assistance skills at least once per month, just to give them feedback. We've guided facilities through training. You can have staff complete the modules individually online, or you can have your staff developer make sure that people do it in a group, like have people come in and 2-hour sessions at a time, or we've done 2 half days on a Saturday. So you can really do it in whatever way is going to be most conducive to getting the training done for the staff members who are willing to do it. Usually it takes roughly a month or so for staff to complete all the total of 8 hours, and then you can monitor how they're assigned and how they're doing after that. So similar to what we've talked about before, you would want to monitor how many residents are being assisted during how many meals, and then monitor the impact of that assistance on intake, and review the trainee experience at regular intervals. We have an observation checklist that I'll show you that you can use with trainees. So this is the checklist. It can also serve as what we call a performance evaluation. So when they complete the 8 hours of training, then you can assign them to an individual resident to help during mealtime, and then an observer can watch them as they help that person and go through this checklist and give them feedback about all the things that they did or didn't do. Very simple things like washing your hands prior to helping someone to eat, ensuring that the served meal is in accordance with the resident's prescribed diet, etc. But this really just kind of breaks it down into easily observable components that the observer can make sure that the trained staff member is comfortable with the task, and knows what they're doing. And I'll say here that this same checklist can be used on your existing nurse aide staff, on agency staff, really anybody in your facility who is helping with mealtime assistance. And these also, the same people who receive this training to help with mealtime assistance, they can also help with snack delivery between meals. So they can help with both types of nutritional tasks. And in fact, when we've helped facilities do this in the past, they've used them for both mealtime assistance and snack delivery. Other additional strategies that we just generally recommend is just the, keeping in mind that really everyone in your facility can potentially help to support good quality mealtime assistance and snack delivery between meals, even without this formal 8 hours of training. For example, lots of different kinds of staff can help transport residents to and from the dining room, either for group dining during meals or for group snack delivery between meals. Lots of staff can help with very simple meal setup. So just opening containers and making sure that all items are in easy access. This really helps those residents who are capable of eating independently, but just need a little extra help at the very beginning of the meal so that everything is open and just easy for them to do on their own. Any staff can walk around during meals or snack time and intermittently offer verbal reminders or encouragement to eat, talking to the residents. Oh, it's nice to see you in the dining room today. How's your lunch tasting? Oh, what kind of soup are you having today? That kind of thing. Your social activities personnel are probably just naturally wonderful at that. Similarly, other types of staff can help with offers of alternatives or extra helpings and substitutions, and then take the time to go and get those items from the kitchen and bring them back to the dining room, so that the time that the other staff are using to help residents eat is really dedicated to that and uninterrupted. And of course, encouraging family involvement during meals to provide socialization or bring items from the outside, assuming that family visitation is allowed within your facility, is obviously also incredibly helpful. So we do have a lot of training resources on our Center for Quality Aging website. And you can also see a link to the dining assistant training for non-nursing personnel, this 8-hour training curricula that I just mentioned. There's a link to that through our center website as well. And I believe Isaac will also be posting a lot of these materials so that they're easily accessible to everyone in attendance. And then there's just some additional resources that we've listed here. And I will stop there to save some time for any questions that people might have.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Simmons. That was really great. Folks, if y'all have any questions, please feel free to ask them at this time. As Dr. Simmons says, I will disseminate the recording of this webinar in a couple of days, probably early next week. And as well, if there's any of these resources that are of interest to you, please let me know and I can disseminate those as well. And all of these resources will be on our website, which is on the UMC Center for Quality Aging kind of home website. So I'll make sure to disseminate all those links and the recordings probably early next week. But yeah, if there's any questions that any of y'all have, please feel free to ask them right now.
Or you're also welcome to post them in the chat. And if you have follow-up questions, you're welcome to either email me directly or email Isaac, and I'm happy to get back to you if you have a specific question about how to use one of the quality improvement tools or some of the other guidance that we shared today.
Just as an FYI for everybody in the chat, I also just sent another link, which is for our session evaluation survey. If y'all could just take that really quickly. I think it's only 5 or 6 questions. It shouldn't take more than 90 seconds for you to fill it out. It really informs our webinars and helps us know what we can improve and how they're being beneficial to you all. So please, if you have the time, please fill out that as well. And yeah, information. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, I think I heard someone talk. Maybe not. Maybe I just heard something weird in my headphones. But as Dr. Simmons said, if y'all have any questions, please feel free to email her or send them my way, and I'll make sure she or anybody else in the team who's in the purview of your question can get a hold of them and get you all a good answer back. And again, I will send out all of the recorded material, this webinar early next week, as well as provide the links if you want to access any of these kind of links and resources that Dr. Simmons utilized throughout the webinar today. So if y'all don't have any questions, I guess we can end a few minutes early here. And if you do, please feel free to ask them at this time.
Thanks for attending today, everyone.
I just got a message in the chat from Marie that says there is a question. Marie, I don't know if you can unmute yourself to ask it. Oh, no, sorry, Claire asked it. Carol asked it earlier. She asked, have you known of outside volunteers going through the training to assist?
Yes, it's less common than most facilities opt to cross-train existing staff. So when we were working with sites, they most often would train their housekeeping staff and like, admin people, sort of like the front desk person, social activities, those kinds of folks. But a few sites did incorporate some volunteers, and I actually helped our local VA facilities. I work within the VA as well. And when I helped the VA implement this, they actually had a group. They already had an active volunteer program, and we did train volunteers within the VA to do this. So if you already have an active volunteer program within your facility, then I would recommend, sharing that opportunity with them, because they could be a great resource. If you don't already have a volunteer program and it would require organizing one, that might be its own extra, extra undertaking that you might not have time for. But yes, but if you already have volunteers, then they definitely can be offered the training.
Awesome. Thanks for that great question, Carol. Great. Well, Dr. Simmons, I think we can go ahead and call it a day here on the webinar. And great, okay, everyone, y'all be on the lookout for early next week for my email with all the resources and the link for this presentation. So thank you all for attending. Thank you, Dr. Simmons, for a great webinar. And I'll talk to you all soon.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.